The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Want the real story behind the sound bites and headlines? Let's find the facts. Remember, it's not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. You are not paranoid or confused. You just need to know.
Welcome in, everybody. It's time for yet another edition of Everything You Need to Know. I'm Kip Keefer right here on TKR, and another tumultuous week around our favorite place, Washington, D.C., the epicenter of everything that happens in the world these days. With always controversy, always contentious discussion, just a real, I don't know, I'm looking for the right word here, but just a real unfortunate, tumultuous situation of different agendas and people always trying to one up each other. It's a shame because the whole idea of a representative republic that is ruled by a constitution is the fact that people have to work together. They need to compromise. They need to come up with the best solutions for the country and its citizens, not for their personal agenda and fortunes. And that's unfortunately what we're living with right now. And it's frustrating for me. I come to you guys every week here on Need to Know, and we talk about these things. And I establish from the very beginning that I am not about Republican versus Democrat. What we're experiencing here in this country is completely on a far different level of simple party politics. And that's the first group of people that you have to deal with when you make sure, and I do this in my case because I think as an American, we all have a responsibility to be as informed as we can possibly be. That's part of the price of living in this kind of country where it is of the people, by the people, for the people. But the people have a responsibility as the guardians of the government to educate themselves in what's going on, and to take just sound bites and things you hear or some things that an influential friend tells you, or or not take a position based on the fact that you are concerned that you're going to be ridiculed and criticized and laughed at and made fun of. That's shirking your responsibility. You have a serious obligation to educate yourself, to form your opinions based on what's best for you and your family and what's best for the country we live in. And we're just in a really rough spot right now where there's just so many other influences. And I kind of just want to talk about today some of the frustrations I have as being a very well-informed citizen, not being political in nature. Again, I have just as much disgust with representatives on the Republican side as I do on the Democrat area. The Democrats are really kind of worthless these days because the people that are not extreme leftists have allowed their party to be totally hijacked by this agenda of these crazy people that just believe that America is evil and is founded on all these flawed principles, and they're just getting the short end of the stick. You watch these riots and rallies of these fanatical nut jobs, and that's what they are, that are out in the streets yelling and screaming and chanting and repeating. That's the one that really gets me. Did you see on the subway in New York the other night? So what you have here is these protesters, to call them probably the most mild word you could call them, these protesters out screaming their lungs out about, we need a ceasefire, and the poor Palestinian people, ignoring the fact that between 1,200 and 1,400 Israelis were slaughtered by basically a terrorist hit squad. If you see footage from that horrific incident at the music concert in Tel Aviv on the night of all of that going on, it's absolutely horrific. And to have women, young women, out in the streets, stomping around, marching, screaming at the top of their lungs, and seeing that footage of, it's so graphic, it's so disturbing, of women being completely humiliated, sexually assaulted in a stadium outdoors by this frenzied pack of animals. That's basically all you can describe it as. Grabbing women, ripping their dress off, and having at it right there in the open in the stadium. Not to mention the fact they're slaughtering people or right and left while that's going on. It's one of the most horrifying scenes in the history of mankind. It really is. And to now be in the streets, the same crowd that would be completely outraged by any kind of, atrocity performed against a female, for young women to be out there supporting Hamas, this certified, and you can't classify them as anything other than a terrorist group. The whole world has classified them as a terrorist group, and they have since their formation back in the 70s. The Palestinian people elected enough of these people to government of their area in the Gaza Strip area to allow them to ascend to full power. And don't be fooled. This is not just a fringe organization that's hanging around in the midst of the Palestinian people. There is no Palestine to start with. Let's get that clear. There's no country called Palestine that the Israelis have pushed out of the way and have abused to the point where their existence is threatened. The Palestinian people that chose to leave modern day Israel have settled on to a strip of land that rightfully is Israeli territory, but they have allocated the entire Gaza area as the place where the Palestinians could resettle. And that has been a tenuous situation since the 60s when all that took place. Israel, of course, formed in 1948 after World War II by predominantly Great Britain, who was the last great civilization, I guess you could call it colonial group that controlled that area. And the British pretty much engineered the formation of the Israeli state with the support of the other allies, including the United States, who, as it always is, it's just like the formation of NATO in Europe. They form these organizations, have all these high expectations for success and kumbaya for everybody. But then when it comes time to pay for everything, they always look across the pond to Uncle US, Uncle Sam. Hey, dude, you need to pony up here for all these great plans we've made. Every deal you have with the Europeans, it's always the same, and it continues to this day, of course, but that's another story. The bottom line is the Palestinians resettled surrounding Israel and eventually elected a government based on the formation of a terrorist organization known now as Hamas. Same situation with Hezbollah on another border of Israel that is basically shadow presence in the country of Lebanon. But you've had this hotspot for so many years because there's just great angst over the city of Jerusalem being the holy Mecca spot for both the Arabs in that area, the Islamists, and of course for the Jewish faith. And so control of Jerusalem has always been kind of at the core of all this. And it is just a situation that continues to fester. So anyway, with all that being said, and watching these leftists, and that's why I started this, the Democrat Party has been pretty much hijacked by this ideology. And that's coupled with and funded by the ideology that I'm talking about is funded by actors from around the world that really want one thing and one thing only. They can't destroy the United States externally, militarily. So they are trying to implode our country from within by creating instability and a lot of division. And of course, the importation of tens of millions of individuals from all around the world, mostly single men, unvetted. I know you've heard about the 8 terrorists that were let into the country because they couldn't find any data negative on them, despite the fact they were ISIS-K representatives from one of the former Soviet republics. They did manage to round all them up once they came to light of who they were. But that's just one group of 8. Let's just imagine that all these millions of people, who's in this country right now and who's up to no good, who's planning on breaching a power plant and creating a nuclear incident, who's plotting to completely poison some major metropolis's entire water supply or do some kind of nefarious deeds like that. When Christopher Wray, the FBI director, continuously goes to Congress and says, we have never been under a greater threat in the history of this country than we are right now, with these millions of people, many of whom we know are terrorists and have bad ideas for what they're going to do to this country. But to hear the FBI director do that while he has sat on his hands for 4 years and let the administration that he serves just open the borders and let anybody in who wants to come strolling in, I'm sorry, I keep harping on this, but it strikes me the wrong way. Christopher Wray doesn't have a shred of integrity. He was a Trump appointee, by the way, after James Comey, of course, was run out of town for being a political hack and a jackass who was spinning his own webs. The FBI has a sad history of a lot of this kind of behavior. And Christopher Wray, I told you on last week's episode, if you missed it, I'll give you a brief synopsis of it. But in the Hunter Biden trial, the first thing the federal prosecutor did was hold up the famous Hunter Biden laptop. And the Hunter Biden laptop has been in their possession since they went to the computer repair store, and the FBI confiscated it in December of 2019. So they had it for a whole year leading up to the 2020 election, never mentioned it. It was not ever a thing. And then finally, that store owner had kept a copy of the hard drive. He gave it to some operatives, including Rudy Giuliani, and the New York Post wound up with it. And right when they were getting ready to go to press at the New York Post with excerpts and information on that laptop, that's when the Biden campaign, a month outside of the election in 2020, got together with 51 former intelligence officers, including 5 former directors of the NSA or the CIA, and they drafted the infamous letter that they circulated to all the media outlets and also let President Biden use in his last debate with former President Trump, talking about you're talking about a laptop that is completely been identified as Russian disinformation. It's not true. All the nefarious material on there, all of the romping around with Hunter and a bunch of working girls, we'll call them, and doing drugs on camera and glorifying what a great experience that was. But all of that was just the salacious part. The really disturbing part of the laptop was absolute chronicled information about the dealings of the Biden family business overseas. They have no business. They have no product. They have no service. He's flying around with his father, the vice president of the United States, on Air Force Two, and going and making deals in these areas like Ukraine and China and Russia and a bunch of other countries that basically brought millions of dollars to the Biden family. And it's not speculation. I heard a commentator yesterday say, well, all of that's not proven. I don't know how much more proof you need than his own words on his own laptop, coupled with a couple of IRS whistleblowers who have testified to Congress that they have the whole thing already unraveled, but they've been ordered to not say anything. They were not allowed to come forward with their information. To have former business associates of the Biden family come forward and say, yep, the family, what we were peddling was an influence to Joe Biden, is direct access to Joe Biden. That was the Biden family business. You still hear people say, well, the vice president at the time, the current president, Joe Biden, he didn't have anything to do with the Biden family business. His brother and his son over there peddling access to him. That is exactly what they were doing. They set up 20 shell companies around the world to kind of disguise all this revenue coming in. They put money in the accounts of 9 different Biden family members to further try to conceal it. For people to say, well, there's no proof of Joe Biden's involvement, when witnesses have sat before Congress and described meetings that he would participate in, and the IRS whistleblowers, they have nothing to gain. These are guys that were just like any other IRS person. They see financial misdeeds, and they want to step up and take care of them, and they were not allowed to do so. So all of this, coupled with what I was saying about Christopher Wray, sounding the alarm that we are all in grave danger because the administration he serves has let these people just pour into this country, and we don't know who they are or where they are. It really is disturbing in the fact that the whole reason that we've got this administration, what a difference it might have been if, when the New York Post started publishing those excerpts, that the country became aware of this guy and what his whole approach has been to cash in as much from his public service. I love that term. It's the ultimate self-service. But I think that would have influenced a lot of people. Now, of course, that opens the door to a whole nother conversation that we won't talk about today. But if you do your own research, you will see, because it's pretty much suppressed, of course, by the normal media. But in Georgia and Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin, and previously in Arizona, 5 of the swing states that determined the outcome of the 2020 election, there have been major developments in every one of those places on people being indicted or fired, or information coming to light about shenanigans, blatant abuses of the 2020 election that took place, that any person with common sense can see exactly that was the only explanation for what happened there. And again, whenever I talk about these things, I get into these situations where I get people countering me. I don't post a lot on X, which used to be Twitter. I put my opinions occasionally on Facebook when it becomes something that I need an outlet to kind of explain what's going on to people that aren't paying attention. But I get blowback from people that, can only see me in one light, as a Trump supporter. What, you're just a Trump lover, and Trump's a convicted felon, and Trump's a terrible individual, and Trump did this, and Trump ruined that. And I don't think in any of my postings in recent months I've mentioned the word Trump a single time. It's not about Trump. Trump is leading the movement that would come in and counter this and could turn it back around away from what's happening now, that you've got a Democrat-controlled government that has sold out They're filling their pockets with money from foreign entities like the Chinese Communist Party, like George Soros, the Austrian repatriate that's based in Canada now, and his son, who just pumped millions and millions of dollars into promoting this new world order kind of idea where we're just going to have one central world government. And without the Americans in that particular equation, they already took steps in that direction with the formation of the European Union a few years ago. They have this dream that we're going to just live in harmony as one big great community, and all these nefarious actors and strange bedfellows that are pulling the strings on this stuff. Eventually, that's going to completely unravel because they all have different agendas. I mean, think about this: the Chinese Communist Party is on the same side as radical Islamists because the American and the United States of America is the target. It's got to be taken down. The world's greatest home of resources and military might and wealth. That is a absolute must to be destroyed for all of these people to move forward. But they don't have common goals at all, except for the destruction of the United States. They're not going to have any kind of success if the worst does happen and our country basically implodes with the internal effort that's going on right now. It's the strangest group of people and different agendas that are involved right now than you can possibly conceive. So I have to wage these discussions. One of them is a guy that I do a lot of sports broadcasting, of course, particularly college football. One of them is one of the prominent kind of always agitates and always tries to get people to react. Says a lot of outrageous things, and I halfway have had a lot of respect for him from the standpoint that he's willing to be kind of the counter voice, and he's not an Alabama fan. In fact, he goes by an anti-Alabama title, but he has gotten into the habit of just barraging me with all kinds of political posts, and it's the most general. What you hear in mainstream media, all the terminology you'd expect about Trump being a felon and a dictator and leading the insurrection. Well, first, let's clarify that. And I've told you this before. The insurrection on January 6, 2021 was a bunch of people that were outraged about obvious election irregularities and were told they were not allowed to have any counter opinion that something was wrong in that election because that's anti-American, that's anti-democracy. So, it's the perfect cover when you've cheated your ass off, and then you can say, well, you can't complain about this because this is how our system works. That was a free and fair election, and we're not allowed. They actually, there were corporations that put out, and I won't name but they were in the broadcast area, that put out edicts that hosts were not allowed to cast any negative thoughts about the election because it's over with and it's done, and we're not going to talk about it. People say, well, the courts, there were never any successful cases to prove election fraud. Courts wanted nothing to do with it. It was a radioactive subject, and the bottom line is, so every time these people pull off some audacious stunt, they have the cover of hiding behind, well, this is what's best for democracy, and if you're questioning it, you're anti-American. By not questioning it, that's anti-American. So anyway, the long and short of the story is, it's all this generic canned crap about all those things. And anybody who's taking seriously the New York felony convictions, that was the biggest joke of a trial, and the charges and the agenda is so clear cut to anybody who has a functioning brain. He was charged with crimes that have never been prosecuted or paired together before. There was no real description because you can, if you have any blowhard in your ear about his convictions in New York, you can ask them one simple question. Well, what was he convicted for? What crimes did they find him guilty of? And I'm going to tell you, 98% of people will not even be able to give you a general description of what felonies Donald Trump was convicted of, because it's so abstract and so just cooked up. It's kind of amazing to me, the irony of some things. We've always called those trumped up charges. Well, that really fits here because they're trumped up charges against Donald Trump. But again, all the things that I point out about what's happening now are set Trump aside. I'm not campaigning for Donald Trump, but I am campaigning actively and calling attention to a very, very serious, nefarious group of events that are happening here, and the clear-cut agenda and all of the very weird variety of people that are pushing it and organizations and governments that are pushing it are all on the same page of trying to destroy this country and tear up the Constitution and make us a good global citizen. Just like all I mentioned, the Europeans want our money for all of their different programs. The whole world is in that line. We need America's wealth. We need America's strength. We need America's resources. We're all trying to take this country down and make them a good world citizen. And you know what that means for me and you? We're going to live in basically a third world country where we're told what we can do, where we can go, what we have to do for a living, what we can drive, what we can use to prepare our food, where we can live, how we can heat our homes. You're going to live in a society that is 100% government run. It's a Marxist approach. Government is all knowing. Government controls industry. Government controls healthcare. Government controls everything. And government will control you. If that's what you want, go ahead and support our vegetable in chief right now. And if any of you listening thinks he's making a single policy decision, you're just not paying attention, because this guy isn't capable of putting his shoes on and keeping his balance as he walks around and wanders around on a stage wondering which way he's supposed to go. To think that Biden is orchestrating any policies, he is a figurehead. He is a puppet. He is out front because some people still view him as a centrist, which is absolutely laughable. He is a hired hand to go out there and try and mimic some kind of sense of still having a couple of marbles rattling around, when if you watch him, you know that's not true. He is not producing any of the policy. It is unelected bureaucrats and departments and agencies and bureaus and the previous administration, Democrat administration, the Obama people that are pulling the strings, calling the shots, in conjunction with the George Soroses and the Rockefeller Foundation and other people that are pumping millions of dollars in for these fake protests of people on subway cars, when one guy will yell out, "Are there any Zionists on this car?" And then the other minion, dumb, I won't say that word, but and they go, "Are there any Zionists on this car?" They repeat in these chanting kind of just juvenile, stupid things, and he goes, "Okay, good. I don't see anybody raising their hands, so I guess we're good." So this is the world we're supporting if we have any inclination of sending this administration back to Washington, and this guy clearly suffering from quickly advancing dementia, to even think about reelecting him. If anybody chastises you for supporting a different candidate, man, you have a cannon load of ammunition to counter that with, well, who are you supporting? A guy that, can't even tell you what day it is or where he is or who he is. It's really a bizarre time to be alive and watching all of this. And I'm tired of arguing with people who don't take the time to learn their own opinion, who just accept the regurgitation of what you hear every day in the mainstream media and from other uninformed people who don't know what they're talking about. I'm Kip Keefer. That's what you need to know this week. We will be back again on TKR next week with more. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week, and God bless the United States of America.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.